Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in another episode on Speaking to the Specialist. It's something I really enjoy, is finding experts in areas that I don't know a lot about, and just finding out more. And today's topic I think is a really good one, and I think we're all going to learn, including me, is going to learn a lot. All right, so I'm just going to briefly say, first of all, hi to Timo, Paul, and Oloff, and very briefly introduce them. Timo is the founder and CEO of Verum Capital, and a genuine Swiss banker. And you're going to hear as soon as, well, actually, Timo, say hi.
Morning, everybody.
Yeah, that's
was it with an accent enough? Okay. You can use subtitles. Well,
that's fantastic. Thank you, Timo. Yeah, so a genuine born and bred Swiss banker of 30 years experience. Paul, SA-born Swiss banker, extensive experience. I think 5 years as the CEO of Julius Baer, so really experienced, but obviously from a South African perspective, which is great. Morning, Paul.
Hi there. Morning, everyone.
And Oloff, which is sort of, as Timo likes to say, the next generation Swiss banker. So South African, and sorry, Paul is the commercial director at Verum, and Oloff is a financial planner and structuring specialist at Verum. Morning, Oloff.
Thank you, Benny. Morning, everyone.
All right, so the reason we've got 3 panelists today is because this can be a really involved topic, and to be honest, this is probably the talk that I've invested the most time on to condense to something that'll make sense to people. So I think really today, everyone, if you want to get a quick overview of what we're talking about, this topic, and is it worthwhile getting in, I'd really try and take notes today and pay attention, because we spent a lot of time trying to really simplify and condense it to the essence. So I don't think you're going to be able to do a quicker due diligence on Swiss banking than we're going to do today. All right, so maybe just to start off then, if I can set the scene, if you think back 20 years ago, I think we had something like 5 South African families that were banking in Switzerland, and the rest of us all in South Africa, and some of us had some grey money overseas, but in essence, most, South Africa is very isolated, and people's lives were in South Africa. And then over the last 20 years, we've sort of expanded a bit, international diversification, asset allocation. That stuff, I think most people on the call, that sort of stuff is sorted out. But in essence, the client or our clients were still living in South Africa. So yes, some of their money was offshore, but in essence, they were still a South African citizen. And what's changed, or what we're seeing is changing, and it's changing more and more, is that people's lives, or that they're moving from being a South African citizen to more like a global citizen, which is different. If you think about that, introduces a lot of complexity, because now if you think about it, the clients they are doing stuff outside of South Africa. They could be traveling, could be business interests. The kids are studying and living overseas. The clients are starting to acquire property, rental agreements, lifestyle assets. And so there's this shift where our clients' lives are now not only in South Africa. Okay, and so that creates a very complex situation for clients, and often for financial planners as well. And then now, for full disclosure, Verum is actually a client of AssetMap, and it's so interesting to see when they use AssetMap, as well as the advisor they're working with that uses AssetMap. It's good to see, and so thank you, Timo and the team, for using AssetMap. And I think that, or maybe I should ask you, what is your reason? What do you see the benefit of using AssetMap in your client engagement?
It was, Benny, I think we can go back very far into the Swiss banking history, and it has changed. But what hasn't changed is like the planning aspect of how you have to talk to your client and how to plan him or her or the family, going forward. And I think asset map, if you go into it, it's a great tool on just get the first overview of a family structure, which is great. And actually, when you finalize the process, you can actually see how the concentration of assets, where the assets are currently booked. And sadly, in most of the cases, you would see most of them are still in South Africa. But as you said, in the past, offshore banking was, kind of available for the richer families. And today, I think it's more of a matter of actually dive into and explain to smaller families or couples, what's possible offshore. And once you have done the asset mapping, you can actually do a second asset mapping and see how you want to shift from local to global. And obviously, we are all about global, and Paul is more about also including global, is also about local because of his other job he has, and he's going to dive into that a bit later. But yeah, so asset map is a great tool to set the scene for a family to sit down to discuss. Look, you got 90% of your assets in South Africa and 10 maybe offshore or in a retirement annuity program or something like that. But now the ratio must change because of the where maybe your family goes, going into the future, where your kids are going to live, etc. So that global citizen you have mentioned, I think, is a very good one, because sooner or later everybody will become a global citizen because opportunities are not only in South Africa, they're spread across the globe, and we can cover that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see when you do an asset map. You start planning in rands because the expenses are in rands. And then as the clients' lives become more global, the first thing that happens is the expenses start going into a foreign currency, whichever currency they're thinking, whether it's dollars or pounds or something. And it's interesting to see that shift and what that means. So thank you for that, Timo. I mean, what I really, for the audience, what I was trying to think is to summarize it as follows. What we want to get out of today, we want to understand what is this Swiss banking thing? What is this? What does it mean to be this global, the infrastructure to support a global citizen? What we need to understand a little bit. Who is it for? In other words, if we think about our clients or potential clients, which clients are likely now and into the future going to need services around that? What is the role of the financial planner? So what is it? Is the people on the call today, do they have a role to play in empowering our clients to be global citizens? And then, of course, does it make commercial sense because it comes with a lot of cost and risk, and what is the benefit for us to offer these additional services to clients? And is it even possible? And of course, with Verum, I mean, I really like it, Timo. What you've done is not only are you planners in your own right and you've got your own client base, what you're doing is you're saying, we want to make Swiss banking accessible for all financial planners in South Africa. And so that, I think, is an amazing story. And maybe I should say right up front, thank you. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so maybe I'll start with you, Timo, because you've got 30 years experience. Just give us a sense of what does it mean even to be like in that Swiss banking environment? Where did you start? What is your experiences? And maybe a little bit then when you came to South Africa and why you stayed, what you're trying to do in South Africa.
Yes, it was a pleasure. No, thanks. So yeah, let's go back to 1986. This is when I started with a bank which is today not existing. It's been merged into UBS, which was called Swiss Bank Corporation. In '86, I was an apprentice. This was a time where we were still writing credit notes for dividend coupons of dividends and clipped off the coupons of the certificates. So this really goes back far. Obviously, in the meantime, there has been a lot of merging of banks and incidents, in the industry which were not great. I've been always kind of an expatriate, I moved around. I was touring for the Swiss banks quite a bit. So I've seen many financial places or financial centers. But Switzerland kind of always stayed its course, and has developed, unfortunately, the last incident with Credit Suisse, these kind of things you can't avoid, because these are global issues, that eventually will obviously fire back to somebody like Credit Suisse, but the whistleblowing going back, about the banking secrecy and the U.S. affairs and hiding money from the governments. I mean, these things have all been passed. The financial center has been cleaned up. Short-term money has left, maybe, Switzerland because of some upset groups of people. But today, I think the money is back, or the money is back in manifold. And Switzerland has become that financial center where you get quality advice, reliability, fast execution, just general reliability. And this is why we focus on Swiss banking. I mean, we could go, for our custodian partner banks, we could go to the UK, we could go to Mauritius, anywhere you want. Maybe I'm also a bit biased, so I'm Swiss and I just have grown up in that environment. But I think the reason why I'm here and why Verum exists is really because I saw a gap. I saw a gap of what I've been experiencing for the last many decades, and I thought that I thought, let's bring something into the country which is going to supplement what you guys already have. And when I was traveling to South Africa a lot as well, with my last employer, Julius Baer, as an MD responsible for Africa, I saw that gap becoming bigger and bigger, because Switzerland has started evolving into more technological advantages, which I thought, South Africa is not following that trend, and for me the gap has become bigger and bigger. And me coming here as an offshore banker opposite a financial advisor here locally, I saw my advantages, and I was using them, logically in favor of myself and the bank. But when I then was about to open the office for Julius Baer in Xanten, I thought, I could be doing better, bringing something in, a product in, a company in that actually explains now what should be done. I don't want to be arrogant, saying we know better, but I think there's a clear gap somewhere in this country where the independent financial advisor is actually dependent on just a few players. There's not enough insight on what's actually possible offshore. And IFA may believe, okay, if you externalize R1 million, the only way to invest it is in a fund. And the only client that IFA may have is like a private client. But you can be developing so much more as an independent financial advisor to truly become independent and self-sufficient, rather than relying on third parties. And that, I think, is also what Oloff is going to talk about later on what's appealing for him as the next generation advisor, knowing what he knows from me now. And I'm quite proud that he's actually adapting that thinking, and then they always thought changing people's mind could be easy, but it's not, because you're in such a pattern of a network of products and services, of providers, that actually it's very convenient, for you guys to just like plug in and play, and you get something out of it. But what I want to come in with Swiss and Verum is, you can do so much more for yourself and your clients by using the right tools through the Swiss platform we have been launching in this country.
We're going to explore that definitely. I mean, those tools that you're talking about, I think that's what people on the call want. They want to hear what are those tools that are available to them. So we're going to cover that in a moment. Just Paul, your perspective as a South African, your exposure, and like just what is it like to be in that Swiss banking environment? Why, as Timo says, why Swiss banking and not, I don't know, Mauritius banking?
Yeah. So Benny, thanks, and hello to everyone on the call today. So I come from an interesting perspective, and one in the sense is everyone on the line. I've spent my career over 2 decades, not as long as Timo, but in the advisory space, I can relate heavily to what you go through every day of your life. And having cycled through all the big brands, Investec and Rand Merchant Banks, etc., I sort of constantly had this, things didn't always make sense. I heard about this, how they did things offshore, and I heard about, every time our delegates went to Davos's of the world now around the Swiss banking, financial services sector, etc. So that was my experience. Eventually, I exited the formal corporate SA space and went and worked for Julius Baer and actually looked after the local advisory office here for a few years. And my initial experience of Swiss financial services was, it was a wonderful experience in the sense of, yes, it's got the glitz and glam, and you can't deny walking down Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich, and you line wall to wall with these beautiful stores, etc. But you go behind the closed doors of a Swiss custodian financial services company, and you just met with this. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for longer than, as long as our agricultural sector has been running in South Africa, type of story. And they just become that. It's become a massive part of what makes the jurisdiction of Switzerland so important now. So, and importantly, we look after clients that are domiciled and that live in multiple countries around the world. What I like about and why I believe that this is the holy grail of financial services global solution is that it is relevant and applicable no matter where your clients exist, no matter where they choose to live. So it really becomes that family-orientated, central, wealth and investment financial services hub. You have a client that lives in Australia, for instance. Now, they'll need to get their Commonwealth Bank down the road account to facilitate life. But when it comes to wherever you are in the world, storing your wealth, I call it, we live in the sun, we live in South Africa in this beautiful weather. Well, definitely in Joburg, you can see the sun streaming in here. But when it comes to investing, you've got to rest in the shade. And that's why I believe that shade is the jurisdiction of Switzerland and the custodians that we look after. The important thing, if you look at the banner behind us, the simplification is what's so powerful of what Verium have done is they've made what ordinarily was relatively inaccessible to so much more simple and so much more accessible for clients, and most importantly, IFAs, to be able to leverage that solution and use it as a huge cog. And I'll make one comment as a South African and a South African financial services guy and a key individual in the advice space, is that as much as all the good work as the big life insurers have done in South Africa, from an offshore perspective, they've to an extent brainwashed us, in the sense that they've sort of convinced us over the years that if it's offshore, it's got to go into an offshore life license that's linked to an SA insurer, and that's the way it's got to be, with regard to whether it be CITES tax or whatever it might be. Whereas if you get down to the truth of it, is that actually isn't always the right solution, and often it's not the right solution. It can be a complementary solution. If clients are serious, and if you're serious about actually housing your wealth offshore, for all the numerous reasons why clients want to, and why we advise our clients to have portions of their money offshore now, a true offshore solution, simplified, is the only way to go. And that's we the three of us, certainly representing Verium and the solution and the Swiss platform, we are convinced of it, and hence why we operate in this fantastic business now. But certainly from a jurisdiction around the world, it is the ultimate, and it is a beautifully administered, wonderfully safe and secure jurisdiction, and certainly the one. I'll just make one comment as well, and you mentioned it, Benny. So my second hat I wear is as an executive and chief wealth officer of Fed Group Financial Services. Fed Group being the largest independently owned financial services company in South Africa. And we as an organization, we've chosen to exclusively align ourselves with Verium and the Swiss platform. So we look after over 1,800 brokerages that we built up over the last 32 years. And that's a big statement to make, that a business of that size is the solution that we have aligned with exclusively 100%. So that's an important one there around why I believe what Verium have built is the ultimate in offshore platform availability. Yeah.
Maybe, thank you. Paul, you shared a lot of stuff there, but the key takeaway for me, sitting on the outside looking in, what I just suddenly, I know it might be really obvious to you guys, but often the solutions financial planners put in place is for somebody looking to immigrate, an individual immigrating to a specific location. And then, and then you're going to set your products and your asset allocation around that. But what we're actually talking about, a global citizen, it's not an individual that moves from South Africa to Australia. What we mean about a global citizen is where the person might even stay in South Africa, but the kids are living in the UK, or the one child is living in the UK and thinking of moving to America. The other child is living in Germany. They've got a holiday home in Italy, and they've got business interests in Canada. And can you see suddenly, and so suddenly, it just dawned on me, you need the infrastructure to, as the clients move and their assets and liabilities move, that there's something that anchors that. And so I think that for me is the key insight that I've really missed. So maybe Oloff, if you can, I'd love to hear your sense of, I love these words that I've already used, like Swiss is about reliability and technological innovation, etc. Just give me your perspective a little bit on Swiss banking, and then I want to go into a really practical example. The client walks in the door and you work with that every day, but so maybe just start with your experience.
Yeah, no, thank you, Benny. As you say, our clients are various types of clients, from smaller to larger clients. I started advising about 4 years ago when I joined Verum, and I've managed to use the Swiss platform that Timo and his team have built very successfully in helping those clients become, as you say, global citizens. And maybe some practical examples, I've got clients that have moved to Ireland, Portugal, and Netherlands, and even Malta as well. And all those clients, have managed to build a very strong relationship while they've been in South Africa. And, not much has changed. I'm still servicing those clients, and we have a very good relationship. Their banking continues, as it always used to. And they're very happy, they can have a credit card where they spend their money, either if it's in euros, you can have any currency you really want to. And they spend their day-to-day costs on their credit card. They have their investments in Switzerland, and it's just worked phenomenally well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, now here's the really difficult or the challenging question. Maybe I'll start with Timo again then. Why would our clients not just go and do it themselves? If I've got a client living in South Africa, the kids are overseas, they've got an overseas business interest, why would clients, and then maybe by extension, why aren't just advisors going and helping clients set up banking and lending? And what are some of the in other words, why do we need like tools and solutions to make it simple?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Benny, just when I go back quickly to the global citizen, I think, if you're taking one example like me, as the global citizen, I've been as said, in various jurisdictions throughout my life, and now I came to South Africa because of the benefits we see. But my money has always been at one bank, in Switzerland. So the credit card Oloff was mentioning, is very useful. I'm using my Swiss francs to buy a cheaper rand anytime I go to Woolworths, for example. This is a small thing, but there's bigger things that will relate to the inflationary trend South Africa is going into, and where the rand is becoming like devaluated over time. So I think I'm a good example, because also I have for example, with my wife, I got a trust structure where we're benefiting her nephews. This trust structure is offshore, linked to my assets, my global assets. So this is what we kind of mean, global citizenships is not the person, it's the money, and how the money is being accessible and can be channeled in several ways with the right advice, obviously. So I just want to make that comment. Sorry, I almost
the hurdles, because why don't we all just go into can I like online apply for my Swiss bank account, or what are some of the challenges? Because naively, I mean, like, in fact, we just set up a UK infrastructure, and I sort of thought, oh, no, it's a quick thing, and it took us 6 months, and
Yeah, no, I think this is where we are quite proud. It all falls and stands with the relationship to the custodian banks. You have to be able to relate to what they are facing in regards to legal and compliance issues. There's costs the banks are occurring if accounts are being opened. So they may be a bit hesitant, to open a small account. Let's call it $15,000, $20,000. We are equipped for it. We could help because we have implemented a work process and the workflow which allows the banks to actually accommodate such small accounts. But generally, when I hear and talk to IFAs, they trying to open an account in Switzerland. First, there's the language barriers at some point where the Swiss says A and you understand B. That's where I can also bridge sometimes, by being involved, helping the IFA, writing the due diligence pack for a client. And there's just like the complexity maybe of documents that are not being understood. Trustees sometimes are an issue because they're a bit, they live on an island. They've got a bit of an island life mentality, so it's not so quick. And suddenly you are in a time frame of 3 to 6 months, and the account is still not open because an IFA may have risen a red flag by saying, my clients is in the mining industry, and unfortunately the mining industry in the Swiss sense is a risk industry. So there's more enhanced due diligence necessary. So we can bridge that gap. At Verum, we have admin staff here where they actually sit with the IFA and sit down with the documents, help with the due diligence, do a gap profile, we call that, and then go back once more, not 10 times to the client, like once more to the client, fill the gaps. The package is delivered practically, physically to Switzerland. Then it goes through compliance and things. But we can proudly say we are opening accounts within 5 and 7 days for some providers, or up to maybe 15, 20 days. And that's just because of the planning. That's just because of the skill sets we have. And if you're an IFA and it takes you 6 months to open $1 million account, you're going to miss 6 months of advisory fee. You're going to miss 6 months of trading fees. You're going to miss 6 months of a lot. And at the end, it's a lot of missing out. And this is where we are very strong. And we take it one by one. And we are structured the way where we can standardize things very, very, very efficiently. So for us, it's not a problem dealing with high volume of client requests or small accounts or large accounts. We are equipped to help the IFA, where needed.
Okay, and I'd like to just add one thing there, Benny, and thanks, Timo. Just thinking about the community that's listening to us today, what I experienced many times in my life is that when it comes to where money needs to go offshore, but it needs proper offshore solutioning, some IFAs, because of the complexity that they would experience by doing things directly, literally just chuck it over and because it's just let me just get the client what they need quickly, type of story, and they lose out on the advisory fee, etc. And I think the important thing that Verum have gone and done through the Swiss platform offering is made sure that they champion the IFA. We have agreed already with the custodian banks, you charge your advisory fees. That's all facilitated through our admin process now. You remain fully in control of your clients' offshore monies, and so do they. So those are the actual soft elements that get missed when a lot of individuals try and do it directly with a European bank now. And that doesn't need to happen now. And I see so many advisors who I've met with them saying, no, my client's got all this money offshore, but I'm not involved, and it's something I just did as a favor. You don't need to do that anymore. That's crazy. You work hard for your clients as an IFA, and you need to be paid for that and rewarded for it now. And also, I think advisors, clients often, it's important that they know that their advisors have line of sight of their offshore monies, and that just comes as standard. That's what we do. And that's an important one for me in my advisory work now, is that any offshore money that I have under advice for a client, I am in control of that money. I can give my client control if they want now. And I know that the hard work that I'm doing, my advice fees will arrive in my account every month now because it's facilitated through the platform. So that's some of the important things. And all these facets are complicated if you try to do things directly. Unfortunately, just the way it works. So that simplification is, I think, the key aspect here.
And then, thanks, Paul. I mean, I really like that. And Oloff, can you make it real for us? What Paul is saying is practically when you sit with a client, like what do you have access to bank statements? Practically, what is it that, in other words, how do you have the conversation with the client about, I don't know, and it could be money in a bank account. It could be, because if you think about it by extension, if you've got more global systems, you need liquidity. You need lending capabilities that extends into shorter term investments, longer term investments, etc. Just what do we mean by these tools and platform? What is it like? You log in. How do you manage that for a client?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because the clients can get access to the online portal. They can look at their assets whenever they want to, or they can just ask us for a statement, which we provide, half an hour. And it's everything's very quick, as you say.
But sorry to interrupt, but can I just check what you're saying is you have got access
to
it. Like in other words, you've got access to that information.
Yes, so we've got a limited power of attorney, so the advisor can advise on the assets and we execute for the advisor. On the platform, we do settlement control. So checking that the order was placed correctly, that it's settled in the account, and then we give feedback to the advisor saying, here's your updated statement, your orders are placed, the funds have been purchased. So that's my function too, an IFA as well.
And maybe I should have clarified. I mean, when I say you, in other words, the IFA has got access to the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And the important thing about it's the visibility and access. So the power, we put the power in the hands of the advisor. So you as the advisor have full visibility and autonomy to make sure you can manage your client money the way you need to. And then you, in addition to that, which is really cool, I know sometimes depending on the client, sometimes as an advisor, you want your client to be able to see all their things themselves, and sometimes you don't. That's your choice. You spec the accessibility the way you want to work. Because I know some clients like to log in and see their money at 12 o'clock at night instead of you getting a WhatsApp. Then you set it up like that. But the beauty is that accessibility and that visibility. This is not black hole stuff. This is upfront, available, and really nice and easy to manage. I mean, the portal functionality where you as advisor have your portal where you can go and look and manage your clients is just, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And then we're not going to be able to go into the details, but the way I understand it, and just to clarify for the audience, we could maybe have separate sessions on the more but it literally is not just what we call a bank account, like banking. It literally extends to the whole spectrum of your transactional banking, lending, liquidity, short-term investments, vanilla long-term investments, I don't know, unit trusts, etc. And then of course you get the more complex structured stuff. But I mean, that's what we're talking about. It's like that end-to-end solution. I mean, geez, that sounds really powerful. But we're going to unfortunately have to explore that separate, because we're going to run out of time. Maybe the last question, and I think this is, in my experience, this is probably the hardest. I'm pretty sure a lot of people on the call go like, I mean, this sounds amazing. I can support my clients, I can earn fees, I can be involved, I can help them with these complex decisions and conversations. Where do they start? In other words, how do they identify either existing clients or potential clients? Or maybe they shouldn't even start, maybe they should just speak to you first. But if they start thinking about their client base, and maybe Timo, will start with you. What are typically the clients or their needs? Where is it like, give us a sense, where do the guys start to say, which client, how do I pick a client, which clients, what are the characteristics of that client? Where do they start?
I think, as I think mentioned already before, offshore banking has become accessible to a lot of more clients and people. So I think we are trying to change the perception as well a bit in this market of like exclusivity. But obviously, for a lot of IFAs and companies in the country, they like the bulking exercises. They like the simplicity of, okay, I'm filling in an application now, commit the R1 million, and then the IFA knows it goes into a fund. So I think that perception must be changed a bit. That there's more options for a client, and then you can really pick any client you have. But we will have like a selection tool or a process where we can talk to an IFA, and the IFA tells us, look, I got a guy that got $50,000 in an RA or in an offshore account. What can I do? So we would actually physically sit down with him and see, look, that like in an elimination process. We say, okay, this guy got 50. He's interested in this or that. Then we kind of eliminate, and when we come down to a custody provider, that where it all begins. So this is where it begins of account openings, due diligence. Once the account is opened, the account needs to be funded. With $20,000 or $1,000 or $1 million, options are different, for smaller amounts or bigger amounts. But we can take this mentoring role, with the IFA, and I really hope that. And when I speak to IFAs, I'm always surprised that there's not more questions coming. But then I speak to another one, and then he would say, yeah, I see the problem that maybe current IFAs, they don't want to admit that they don't know better. So I think, just getting out of that negative spin kind of thinking and be more open-minded and learn. There's high executives. I mean, Paul and I, we speak to CEOs of companies that have never even heard of Lombard lending, the whole gearing process. They have not even heard about short-term structured notes, because when you hear of a structured product coming your way for your clients, they're usually 5 or 6 years in terms. There's different options, and this is where we would like to, I guess, call out and say, IFAs, you must be a bit more open to a different approach to what you're doing now. And then everything is quite easy. I said, we are all quite standard in what we're doing, or it's standardized. It's all pre-programmed. We can just plug in and you're cased into some scenarios, and out there comes the solution. But yeah, so that's.
I think maybe just, and I'll give you a second, just Paul, just 1 second. I mean, two things I take from you, Timo. So what you're saying firstly, and it's an important point, is that these tools, the platform you're talking about is not to a single provider. I mean, this is the beauty. It's and I mean, the way the guys explained to me off air is that there are 4 different custodian banks, and they suit different client types. So the Swiss banking isn't like a one size fits all. Everybody gets into one bank or something. So I think that's a really important thing for the people on the call to understand, is that you're not being shoehorned into one solution or one platform. So that's a really important thing. And then the second thing, I think, and I mean, especially the advisors on this call, I mean, they're really open to this, and I think it's really to understand what is that value. Like you spoke about Lombard loans, and so I think it starts with identifying, this thing called a global citizen. Like what in my client base, who in my client base are leaning towards that? I mean, I spoke to a practice the other day. They did an audit. 70% of their clients, 70% of the children of the clients are already living overseas.
Yeah.
Now that's maybe just a start. Where are the kids living? Do they have business interests overseas, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah. So I think people are very keen, but I think it's hard to bridge this thing. What is the value proposition, and how do I identify the clients, and how do we bring it nicely together? And I think certainly from your perspective, what you're saying is you can simplify that through the solution. So Paul, yes?
And Benny, so I wanted to add on something that Timo said, is that, we at Verum, we don't want to be a product provider. We're a partner. That is our approach. So with the spirit of partnership, what I certainly love doing in my role as the commercial director is, and it's proven to be very valuable in certain brokerages, in the sense that we'll come in and, as part of a practice management value add, we'll come and unpack your book with you. Because if it's literally someone said, listen, come and sit down with me for 1 week, spend a few hours every day with me in my practice, and help me optimize my offshore world, as in which clients should we be offering this to, which we shouldn't, which we should be adding this to their existing offshore. We will do that. We love doing that. And that's the partnership approach now. So we want to bring that value to it, because it is simple. It's a duck on water scenario. Underwater, it's complicated stuff, but we just want to make that smooth duck on water feeling for the broker and the client now. So that's part of that value add. We'll come and help you identify. And once you're in it, you A for away. And then you can really bring that. I often say, what are you doing as an advisory, as a brokerage, to give good reason to recontact your clients every year? This is a hell of a good reason to say, listen, I've got something great to talk to you about, Mr. and Mrs. Jones type of story. Yeah.
Listen, I'd love to unpack that in more detail, and we'll see from the audience if they're interested in learning a bit more about the detail. And the one thing I know from Timo, he is absolutely passionate about education. I mean, like he's probably going to go, I'm failing with Benny, but I'm getting there, Timo, slowly.
That's your talent, isn't it? Your talent, yeah.
It looks like, yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, I think I'm going to, I'd love to carry on for another hour. And yeah, so a number of guys are, and if I've got questions, we're going to cover them through. If there are more questions, please ask. So let me just, and we're going to do the questions and answers just now, but let me maybe just end off first of all, saying thank you. I think the fact that you guys are so passionate that you want to help other advisors, this concept of lifting all boats in the industry. How do we make the industry more professional and more value adding to clients? So we really appreciate the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, guys. And I appreciate it.
So what we'll do is we will share, afterwards we'll share the recording, and we'll share your contact details. The one thing I've also learned about the Swiss bankers is they respond quite quickly. So which is fantastic. So you're going to get exactly, you're going to get good survey, good response rate. So excellent. So we're going to we'll share your details and your website, etc. Maybe just to then quickly answer a few questions. So the one question is from Francois asking, if a person with a Swiss bank account, if they've got investments and cash and even loans on the platform and they pass away, is a Swiss will required, and is there Swiss estate duty and stuff? Now we can't unpack the whole thing, but if you could sort of give me, I don't know who's best suited, maybe Timo or Timo to answer, but just in a nutshell, how does estate planning and duty work in Switzerland?
Great question, by the way.
Yeah. Typically there's different type of accounts you may be opening. The Swiss banks, they will take a trust as an account holder or a joint account. We typically recommend, actually, because of also simplicity and the cost factor, we would recommend like a joint account where you and or your partner and or your kids would be account holders. And that's a very simplified, inexpensive way of actually take care of your of passing on your assets in case something happens to some of the account holders. But there's, for example, there's no probate. It's a very simple process. Let's take a joint account. The husband dies, the missus is still there. Now, how is she getting access to all the money? It's a simple process. It's a death certificate. It's an executor that is being identified by the Swiss banks that will be able to make decisions on the account holders' behalf. And then in like 2-3 weeks' time, if all the documents are in order, you know, she will have succeeded the husband's monies. So it's very, very, very simplified. There's no complications whatsoever.
Yeah, and importantly, no probate. Obviously, there's no state duty taxation in Switzerland, so that's an important factor.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Listen, yeah, I just want to see quickly if there are other questions. No, I didn't see anything else. Okay, cool. So
and maybe one other point on that there, it's a little bit of the morbid side of it, is that unfortunately, due to things like COVID, etc., all of us, and obviously Timo being in Swiss banking all his life, but we've all experienced this in practical terms because of account holders that have passed away, and this is the way it works. I mean, your money is in a jurisdiction that works differently. It is, remember, but people don't realize your money is now housed in the Swiss jurisdiction and Swiss regulation authority. So, you know, it's really nicely administered. No worries. Maybe one thing we missed there, albeit that you don't need, so the Swiss bank will execute on the executor and a local will. We always advise as part of our process to have an offshore will, just to make it really neat and tidy. It just makes it that much more clear, but it doesn't require an offshore will in this case for monies held offshore. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, listen, thank you guys. I mean, the big thing I take away from this and is this thing about like, what is a global citizen? You know, like, and what are their financial needs? And clearly, if they can have the family, if the family is going to be moving jurisdictions, they're going to need a home for that wealth. So a home jurisdiction. And so that's a really important decision, I think, you know, when identifying these clients and dealing with what is that home jurisdiction, and then, you know, things like in which currency are we planning their liabilities, etc. So, okay, so cool. So let me just see. There's one more question. No estate duty. The guys are wanting to find out more about that, but maybe we will.
Maybe it's probably worth it being a quick one. So remember, in Swiss regulation, there's no estate duty, SATI, so there's no site tax as there is in the UK and the US. Importantly, you know, if the account holder is still a South African tax-paying resident, assets offshore that are outside of things like trusts will still attract, they're still part of your asset base. They're still deemed assets. And that's the important aspect to note now. I mean, just like an offshore life wrap solution now, they're still deemed assets. There's still a estate duty on it now. But there, obviously, you've got a life assured. So but there's no additional layer of in-country estate or probate tax in Switzerland. Hence why it's such a wonderful jurisdiction to have your funds, as opposed to now getting locked up in CITES complications in the States and in the UK. Yeah.
And then last question, and Brad, as ever, the very practical one. He's saying, you know, what we're missing, can we just please clarify? He wants to open up an account now. Like, where does he start? What does he just speak to you? What is the process? In other words, you know, what are the, like, how does he get going? That's what he wants to know.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the man.
Yeah. So
Speak to Oloff.
Initial conversations, and we explain the process. You know, there's account opening requirements which we discuss, and also the plan for the account, the amounts, etc., all that kind of thing. We just have an initial discussion. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I think the important thing there is, don't leave it until you get a client that asks you. So don't wait until the client says, oh, you know, I'm setting up this business overseas or something, you know, can you help with a bank account? And then I think, as always, you know, you know, it's better to be prepared, you know, put in place the stuff, even if you don't sign pieces of paper, but just find out, make sure you know what the process is, get the stuff in place. So when an opportunity comes around, we can just say to the client, yes, we can.
And we found that, hey, Benny, because one of the important factors is that an account opened on the Swiss platform with one of our custodians doesn't need to on day one be funded. And that's where that's the best advice we can give, is get the account open, get it structured, so that in the event that thing happens where you get a call from your client, they say, hey, listen, have you seen the rand? It's so low. Well, the account's open, you can do the FX, you can send the funds, as opposed to, let's start the process and it's 2 weeks and you've missed on. So it certainly, there's a time frame in which accounts need to have investments and money funded into them now, but it doesn't mean that's day one. That's not the requirement. So it's very, very nice in that sense to get yourselves organized, and you get your clients organized with their offshore accounts and their offshore structures. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We'll circulate everybody's contact details, and yes, and then I'll ask the attendees, you know, if they want follow-up discussions, if they want to cover, because there's really interesting detailed stuff, you know, like Timo mentioned Lombard loans and lending and all of that sort of stuff. I've had no idea those things exist. So if there's we'll ask people, and then maybe we set up a follow-up where we can sort of go into a little bit more detail around those aspects. All right.
Benny, it would be really great to do that, because the Swiss platform offers different silos of products and services, and IFA could be using to not only service the clients better, but also to improve their revenue streams, because we have them partner into our platform products so that they can generate revenues. We are not talking to their end clients. We're only talking to the IFAs, and give them the opportunity to keep the client close, to themselves, and not, for example, have a structured note traded through another provider where there's revenue loss. He can trade that structured note through us directly, become self-sufficient, become more educated, more innovative with a solution a client didn't even know that it exists, or an IFA didn't even know that it exists. And then it goes into actively managed certificates, which is a wrapper for an investment strategy. You may have an idea of private equity, or these are very complicated topics, but we are all equipped to pass these tools on for the IFAs to become truly independent, as their title is, the independent financial advisor, the role they should be playing, and go into an open playing field of services and products where everybody's going to benefit.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us, and of another episode of speaking to the experts. And certainly, I've learned a lot today. I hope you have it as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Benny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cool.